personnel. Bigfoot High School welcomes all of you today to what I hope will be an interesting and rewarding morning. Before I start, I want all my students, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take out your cell phone. I want you to hold your cell phone up in the air, and I want you to do one of two things. I want you to turn it off, or I want you to put it on airplane mode so it's not impacting the Wi-Fi in the room. And then put it away. Okay, here we go. About 5 months ago, I was contacted and asked to serve on a county task force that was being put together to address the issues present in our county and local areas regarding drug use, sale, and dispersal of drugs. The task force that was put together brought many different people to the table, all who work with kids, with families, work with and interact with drugs through many different means. One of the primary areas of emphasis for our team has been to get the word out to the community about the concerns and dangers that are present today in our local communities, in our county, in our state, and in our country. The team that will speak with you today has made presentations or has been available at the Walworth County Fair and the National Night Out. Both of these events were very well received. Still, a very important aspect of our work is to help educate young people about the perils of drug use in our communities and what can be done to combat it. This is where today comes in. This is our team's first presentation to school-age students about this topic. Today, you will hear from several presenters about what they do and how they deal with drugs in our communities. There very well may be strong emphasis today on the dangers and perils associated with opiates, including prescription painkillers and heroin. You see, these two substances are causing great concerns in our communities. There have been many deaths related to the use of opiates in our county, and President Trump has recently declared the abuse of opiates a public health emergency. Some of these deaths have touched us here in our own Bigfoot High School community. You see, drug abuse can happen anywhere. So as we begin today's activity, I want to introduce you to the people who will be presenting to you. This session will not only talk to you about what the dangers of drugs are, but also will include information from the courts, from law enforcement, from specialists in drug testing and monitoring those convicted, from Health and Human Services about general drug information and crisis intervention, from Public Health on public health services available to families and individuals, from the Department of Children and Family Services about services that are available when you are in need, and finally about a journey to recovery. I'm pleased today to introduce our panel of speakers to you. When I call your name, I would just ask you to stand up so people know who you are. Deputy Corey Newman, Walworth County Sheriff's Department. Julie Bonagovsky, Southeastern Monitoring. Nicole Heinrich, Walworth County Department of Health and Human Services Crisis Intervention Manager and a Bigfoot graduate.
No applause for that?
Lisa Brohl, Children and Family Division Manager. Erica Bergstrom, Public Health Officer. Katie Beal, Coordinator of the Walworth County Treatment Court. And Ted Hawver. We will conclude this morning's assembly with a question and answer period for those of you with our presenters. So we will start this morning with Deputy Corey Newman from the Walworth County Sheriff's Department. Welcome.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? If I talk like that? Sorry, I'm not going to use the mic. Okay. As a law enforcement officer, there's a little room in your head, okay? And as you go through your day, typically as a cop, you meet people on their worst day, right? They've had a car accident, they've been involved in a domestic situation, they have a medical issue that needs help, they're speeding and you stop them and write them a ticket. Whatever it may be, there's a room in your head where a lot of those tough images kind of fill up. And you try to balance it as a cop with happy stuff, with good times, hanging out with your family, watching a Packer game with your dad, whatever. And you try to balance that and counterbalance it against all the stuff that you see every day. Worst call for me was a few years ago in Walworth County, and it was around a major holiday, and I got sent to a house for a rescue call, which we get sent to all the time. It could be somebody falling off a ladder, somebody stubbing their toe, or in this case, a pulseless non-breather. So I got sent there, and I was close. You know, you never know how close you're going to be to a call when you get it. It could be 10 miles away in rural Walworth County, or it could be the house that you're parked in front of. You never know. So I was close. So I got there right away, so I beat rescue there. Because typically in Walworth County it's volunteer rescue, so people drop what they're doing and head to the call. So I got there, and it was an individual who was not old, probably in their 20s, pulseless non-breather, and this individual was clearly deceased. So I did CPR as long as I could until rescue got there and took over, and eventually they called it. So it was around the holidays. So the house and everything was decorated for the holidays, and probably the hardest part about it, not just losing somebody and being there while someone leaves this earth, was the family that was behind me watching me do CPR and praying that I'd bring them back, you know. And obviously we didn't. And then I watched that mom kneel down by her child and say their name over and over and over again. And that is stuck in that room in my head. It was that call that motivated me to get into narcotics work. So after that, for about 4 years, I worked undercover narcotics for Walworth County Sheriff's Office. Found myself making a lot of cases against drug dealers, typically with informants, but sometimes I was able to buy drugs directly from the dealers. Cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, that kind of stuff. Right here in sleepy little Walworth County, a guy like me is able to buy that stuff. It's everywhere. Okay? Good morning. My name is Deputy Corey Newman. I'm here to talk to you today about drugs, the path, and your choices. I will tell you that I'm a blunt speaker, okay, because this is a blunt world and this is a blunt topic, and there's nothing that needs to be done with it, with sugarcoating it, because it's real and it's here. I've been a cop for about 12 years with the Walworth County Sheriff's Office that entire time. I'm also a 16-year current member of the Wisconsin Army National Guard, and I was a military police officer for several years in the Army. So I will ask for some participation here today. Maybe it's from the Army, maybe it's from copping or whatever, but if I see you sleeping or not paying attention or jaw-jacking with your neighbor, trust that I will call on you, okay? So buckle up. I'm going to try my best to make this entertaining, and we're going to take a drug IQ test here to start off with. Now, it says on the board there, participation is not an admission of use. Okay, I do this because I just want to gauge your level of knowledge. This is good for everybody in the room, students, faculty, support staff, media, parents, even the gals in the front row here too, and Ted. So let's see your level of knowledge. I'm going to say a word, street slang, whatever, and maybe I'll use it in context. And if you know what I'm talking about, just raise your hand, okay? That's all I'm asking for. There's no shame in knowing or not knowing. And then if you don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure you'll Google it up later anyway after you get the phones back. Okay, so first one, dab. Dab. Anybody know what I'm talking about when I say dab? Okay, thank you. Bars. Bars. Okay, all right. Perks. Perks. Okay. Now, I don't mean like benefits. Perks. Okay. Faded. Faded. Okay. Good. Anybody know what this is? Raise your hand if you know what these are. Okay. And they're not to put coins in. I can't tell you how many times I have people tell me when I pulled it out of their pocket or whatever, out of their car, oh, I just keep my precious coins in there. Not believable. Okay, G-pen. G-pen. Anybody? Okay, couple. Rig. Bring your rig to the park. Okay, good. Soft. Anybody know soft? Coming to the party, bring a ball of soft. Yeah, okay. Zans. A lot more common with Zans. Got about half the room. Anybody know what these are? Okay, a little bit less. These are gem bags. Never once have I seen someone put a precious gem in them. Usually it's powdered heroin or sometimes a nug of green. All right. Addies. Addies. I got 5 Addies. Okay. Crystal. Wow. Okay. Is there a girl in this room named Crystal? Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay. QP. QP. How much for a QP? Okay. Some of these are harder, some are easier. Boy. Boy. If I say boy as reference to drugs, anybody know what I'm talking about? A little bit less. How about this one? If I post on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, anyone seen my girlfriend Molly? Wow. Molly, MDMA. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. All right. Tough question. Who in this room knows somebody through a factual story or because you were there who overdosed on drugs or alcohol? Probably 75% of the room. And I'm not talking about necessarily dying. Someone who needed serious medical attention like 911. One more time, your hands up for that, please. Thank you. 86. Who could tell me what this number represents? Raise your hand if you have an idea you want to take a stab at it. Nobody in the front row here. Yes, sir, in the gray sweatshirt. Go ahead.
One number greater than 85.
Yes, you are correct. Solid. Anybody else legitimate want to guess at what this number means? Yes, ma'am, in the blue. How many people die a day? That's pretty good. It's way more than that. I think it's approximately 1 every 16 minutes in the United States that dies of an accidental drug overdose. So by the end of this presentation, about 8 people in this room, if you applied those numbers, would be dead. That's factual, but that's a good stab at it. The reality is this is how many people in Walworth County have died in the last about 4.5 years of drug overdoses. 86 people. And it is not necessarily only heroin we're not talking about. This is only people who have taken that giant leap into drug use and overdosed on heroin. This could be a mix of benzos and cocaine, or alcohol intoxication too. But trust me, the majority of this is opiate overdose. Opiate, pretty blanket term for a large family of drugs, which could include Perks, Percocet, Vicks, Vicodin, hydrocodone, oxycodone, OxyContin, heroin, morphine, fentanyl, all those things. That's a big number. We're a small county of about 100,000 people, 86 people. That number is only increasing too. So after all the stats are calculated from our medical examiner's office for 2017, I think that's probably going to crack 100. Overdose. Okay, this is real stuff here. Okay, I understand it's not the prettiest. This one on the left here, that went pretty viral on the internet, I think within the last year. I think that was taken off of an officer's body camera as they came upon this scene. That child is in the back seat strapped in while both parents are OD'd in the front seat. And I believe both of these parents were brought back through the use of Narcan or naloxone. But a lot of this stuff is happening, and you see it posted on Facebook Live. You see it posted on the internet. Some people think it's hilarious. You know, they'll pull their phone out and film somebody who's laying on the street corner before they'll call 911 because it's cool to be famous, right? So if you're the first one to capture someone dying on the street, you get a lot of likes or whatever. You come across this thing, see someone who's got this foam cone coming out of their nose and their mouth. That's someone overdosing on opiates. Hypoxia is when your body is depleted of oxygen, which is what happens when you overdose on opiates. And that frothy stuff starts to come out of their nose. When we find people, when cops come upon a scene like that and you see someone, that foam is coming out of their nose and mouth, it's 99.9% of the time it's opiate overdose. Maybe not necessarily from just recreational drug use. It could easily be someone who took too much that was prescribed to them. It's common. It happens. Unfortunately, it's relatively easy to do. Some photos of heroin paraphernalia here. And all of these photos, they aren't just grabbed off of Google Images or whatever. These are cases in Walworth County that I made while I was in the drug unit. These tea-light cookers typically used to cook up drugs to inject with a syringe. Suboxone is a drug that's prescribed for people trying to defeat opiates, but unfortunately they're sold pretty commonly in Walworth County as well. You can also see some more gem bags, these cottons right here, foils and stuff that's typically sold for opiates and powder drugs like that. And that's us making controlled buys and buying this stuff from people in Walworth County. Methamphetamine is unfortunately on the rise in Walworth County. 2014 and 2015, Walworth County led the state in clandestine methamphetamine labs. So that's people cooking meth here in Walworth County and us busting those labs. So if we're leading the state in finding these labs, you can only imagine how many are around the state that are undiscovered and even undiscovered in Walworth County. If you follow the news, you know that there was a meth lab explosion in Lake Geneva within the last year, 6 months or so. Methamphetamine was really popular in the Appalachian area a handful of years ago, but with the advent of the internet and easy recipes and that kind of thing, it's relatively easy to cook methamphetamine through buying supplies at your local hardware store and Walmart. The thing about meth is that when you use it and when you're coming off of it and prolonged use, it feels like there's bugs that are underneath your skin. And you tear at your skin and you tear at those scabs and you can't leave that alone. That's why over time, you know, in this gal's case here, that's 11 years. This is only 1 year. You tear at your face, you tear at your skin, and that's why they look like that, and usually don't have too many teeth left. That's what happens with meth. Here's some photos. Some of these are taken from cases here in Walworth County. Some of them are off the internet. You can see some of the supplies here that go into it: camp fuel and acetone and red devil lye and pseudoephedrine, cough medicine that people get at the pharmacy. THC extract. You can see some more of these containers. that I showed you early on, THC extract is on the rise here too. People don't typically use the flower anymore, the buds, because THC extract is the way everything's going. It's easier to carry. It's way stronger, you know. And in Wisconsin, THC, weed, marijuana is not legal. It is legal in certain states, but it is not legal here. The people who argue for legalization of THC argue that it's a plant that God put on this earth, and it's for us, and it's natural and whatever. That argument is garbage, because THC extract is the way that people are going. The flower, the ditchweed, whatever that grows is not strong enough for people. So over time, people have used different techniques to make it stronger, including pouring butane through ground up marijuana to get extract, the butter, hash oil, honey oil, dabs, whatever you want to call it, that's 80-90% THC content, whereas 30 years ago it was 4 to 8% during Vietnam time. So it's not a natural plant that people just use the way God put it. We'll take questions at the end. Thank you. People are making it as strong as possible, and then, oh, by the way, dropping a dab of it into an e-cigarette and getting high all day. We've been to fatal crashes that are from THC use. It slows reaction time, saps your motivation. And also pouring butane through ground up marijuana leaves and buds, the fumes become explosive. Whitewater, City of Whitewater had a hash oil fire within the last 2 years that destroyed a home. It's incredibly dangerous. Synthetic marijuana, so people think, well, we'll just get around the law in Wisconsin and we'll make synthetic marijuana. It's natural, it's potpourri, it's spice, it's cool. So reality is, what they do is, in Mexico and southwestern United States, they rent these storage units, they lay a piece of plywood down, take a bunch of grass clippings or whatever plant material they can, and they take a bunch of spray bottles loaded up with chemicals, and they spray that and let it dry. So you don't really know what chemicals are in there. I've talked to many people who've been on synthetic marijuana, and trust me, these people know their addiction to synthetic marijuana was harder to come off of than crack. The hallucinations and the things that people go through while they're on that are dangerous. You see the stories in the news about people hallucinating and becoming cannibals and that kind of stuff on some of this synthetic marijuana. Incredibly dangerous, and oftentimes the chemical compounds that are in there are also illegal. Some prescription medication, it's incredibly common. We saw all the hands go up when I said Addies and bars and Xanax and that kind of stuff. At least my estimation, prescription medication among teens and youth is dramatically on the rise. Adderall, Vyvanse, that kind of thing for attention deficit disorder. It's very, very common nowadays, and that stuff is traded like candy at parties. I know it to be true. I've talked to many people about it. Some of the risks are that when you're taking a prescription medication that is not prescribed to you, dosage and that kind of thing becomes a problem. Doctors prescribe that stuff for a specific patient at a specific time. When you go to a party and pull one of these pills out of somebody's hands, it's not for you. There's a lot of dangers with that as far as overdose and addiction. And by the way, pulling out some of your prescription medication and giving it to one of your friends is a felony. You can't deliver a controlled substance to somebody, and sharing with a friend is a felony. Sharing with a friend is delivery of a controlled substance. There are many ways and choices you can make in life, and when I talk about addiction to drugs and that, when some of my other fellow coalition members talk about it, there's a lot of ways that people get to that point. It can be a legitimate prescription that someone is prescribed by a doctor due to an injury. I've met heroin addicts that were high school football standout stars, that blew their knee out in high school, got put on oxy or some type of prescription medication, some type of opiate, and eventually became addicted to that. But when the doctor weans them off of that, it's difficult because they're physically and mentally addicted to that opiate. The cost on the street to buy those pills after the doctor weans you off is approximately $1 a milligram, roughly. If you're taking a 20 milligram pill, that pill could be $20. Oh, and by the way, you're taking 3 a day, every day. So that addiction becomes unsustainable for the amount of money it costs you. Experimentation. I've talked to hundreds of drug users, and the vast majority, I'm talking more than 80%, first drug they tried was marijuana. People argue back and forth about it not being a gateway drug, but I can tell you, talking to hundreds of drug users from crack to ecstasy to heroin to pills, the vast majority of them, the first thing they tried in middle school or high school was weed. Again, I talked about the cost. The cost becomes unsustainable, and it often leads to crime to support that habit. Addiction. You're going to hear a lot more about that today. And I will tell you that some of the sentences that I got, we got in the drug unit during my time there, some of those guys that got sentenced for heroin delivery and that kind of thing several years ago are going to be in prison long after I'm retired from law enforcement. There's at least a couple individuals a handful of years ago that got 15 years in prison for delivering opiates to me and to other people. And I'm kind of a young dude, I think, a little bit, so I'll be long retired chilling while they're still living the dream and the clink. So incarceration or death is honestly the only way that this stuff ends up. You know, that's really the only two ends of this path. One thing I always tell my soldiers in the Guard is to always choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Anybody can make the decision to use drugs. It takes a much stronger person to say no to that stuff. And I can tell you that percentages and stats like that are talked about in this industry, in this field, a lot. And usually we're focused on the kids who are on the negative side of things. So you'll hear stats like 20% of kids use drugs in their freshman year in high school, or whatever that stat is. I can tell you the vast majority of you in this room are not using this stuff. You know, 80%, 90%, 95% of this room has no intention, has never abused drugs. I'd much rather focus on that percentage, those of you who aren't, who are talking to each other, who are making that right decision, that hard right decision, rather than those of you that aren't. And adults can sit up here and talk to you till we're blue in the face. It takes you guys to make that right decision, to talk to your friends, to share this knowledge and that right decision to head down the right path. I'd encourage you to do that. I want to thank you for listening, and next we'll have Julie to come up and talk to us, and please give her the same attention you gave me. Thank you.
I'm Julie Bonagowski. Can you hear me okay? I want to thank you and Principal Hinsky for inviting us here, both class of 2021. So I am from Southeastern Monitoring, and I am in the business of suffering. We provide many services in Walworth County to families that struggle with addiction. We provide GPS services where we put ankle bracelets on offenders. We provide supervised visitation services where families who have been ripped apart because of their decisions and they're not able to care for their children. They're placed in foster care, and it's a terrible thing. We provide drug testing for the courts, for accountability. We provide parenting services. We provide housing services for people in need that are homeless. And so everyone that we provide service for, they've been to some terrible places. They've done some terrible things. It's just, there's been horrible tragedies that the people that we service have encountered. They've abused and neglected their children. We've had kids with broken bones at our office. The parents lose their kids. Last year, maybe 18 months ago, I had 6 families that we serviced, 6 deaths, heroin overdose, directly impacted our agency. People participate in prostitution to subsidize their habits, homelessness. There's family relationships are damaged because of the lengths people go to subsidize their habits. Our clients participate in thefts, lying, they have felony records, their future is compromised. And so people don't just wake up one day and decide that I'm going to be a drug addict. It's a insidious thing. It's sneaky. You know, like Deputy Newman was saying, it could be an injury. It could be a party. You know, however you get introduced to drugs or alcohol, the thing about it is that it steals from you your future. And that's what we see at our office. Futures that have been compromised, kids that are suffering. It's a horrible thing. So a little bit about the genesis of my agency. We started back in 1998 providing just GPS services to juvenile delinquents. And what we found is that the families, the kids, are modeling behavior. They don't know any different. They're doing what their parents have shown them, and they're just demonstrating the same behavior. Our volume was low back in 1998. We just did a couple of hookups, we call them hookups, put a juvenile on a bracelet, couple a month. And that's all we did back in 1998, just put a couple of bracelets on juvenile delinquents to reduce, you know, costs. So they don't have to go to secure detention, we'll keep them home. But now, we offer all these other services that I explained before. We service about 50 families just for supervised visitation, 3 times a week, coming and going from our office. We conduct over 600 drug tests a month. And it's just, you know, this drug issue is a real problem. It steals everything from families. Substance abuse is really the core of all these problems that our agency faces, or that we're trying to solve. We're trying to reconnect, we're trying to rebuild and reestablish families. Oftentimes we don't see success. We see families that they won't regain their family rights, their parental rights. They'll have termination of rights. You know, they don't make it. They can't find their way. They can't find their way out of substance abuse. It has such a tight grip on them. They don't want to lose their children, but this thing has such a tight grip on them that they can't regain control. So that's why all of us are here today. We are all actively working, trying to help families to get control, participating with the drug court, the coalition. We're trying to help people get control. It's time to break the cycle. It's time to break the cycle. So here we are trying to educate you, arm you with information so that you don't have to be a party to all of these horrible things that are going on in our community. What can you do? You can utilize the services at Human Services. You can go to your counselor. If you're facing problems or your family needs help, go to your counselor. There are services in place, systems in place to help you so you don't have to do this alone. With the coalition, we're really focusing on education. I had said that it's a cycle. The kids are modeling behavior of the parents. Well, here we are trying to arm you with the information so you don't have to model behavior and that you can make decisions for a better future and impact your community, your friends. So I'm going to encourage you to get involved. So we are Walworth County Drug and Alcohol Coalition. We're on Facebook. We're meeting on November 30th, 4:30 p.m. at the Matheson Library in Elkhorn. We need youth to get involved. We need to hear what you need so that we can make a difference and change this situation that, this epidemic that we're facing. We want to hear from you, your ideas. So message us on Facebook, like us on Facebook to stay informed. This is being streamed on Facebook. You could tell your parents about it, that you sat in a presentation today, and then go to Walworth County Drug and Alcohol Coalition on Facebook and watch it later. Thanks for your time.
So we represent Health and Human Services. I'm the public health officer, and as we've already talked about today, the drugs impact more than just the one person. They impact us as a community. So Officer Newman showed you the 86 deaths. We're already over 100. We hit 100 in the first 6 months of the year. There were 24 overdose deaths between January 1st and June 30th in Walworth County. So that's 24 families impacted, 24 circles of friends, 24 schools, 24 workplaces, all impacted because of one death. So beyond that, you also have concerns with what long-term diseases you could get. Especially with heroin, you have a lot of different viruses that can be passed through injectable drugs. Hepatitis C, you can't vaccinate against it. More than likely, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. It's painful. It's going to affect every aspect of how you live. Then you have HIV and AIDS. The large outbreak that happened in Indiana was about 2 years ago. That was drug-related. It's not from unprotected sex anymore. It is more common from intravenous drug use. You add into that the impacts that he talked about with the methamphetamine. Lots of drugs heroin is being cut with fentanyl. All of those have environmental impacts. A meth lab or a house where they've identified fentanyl, we're going to now placard the home. Nobody can go in there. You have to have a contractor come in. It's severely expensive. It taxes your tax dollars. It takes over special contractors that don't work in the state to come in to make the home safe enough for somebody else to go back in. So you add all of these things together and it adds a huge environmental impact. Parents, lots of it starts with your drugs. Keep them locked up. Your family members, your grandparents who might have prescription pain medications, or after a death and you're cleaning up the pain medications that are left. It's extremely important to dispose of them in a safe manner. Don't flush them down the toilet or throw them in the garbage. They end up in our water systems. So we have information about drug take-back boxes, but that's the best way to dispose of your drugs. We'll turn it over to Nicole to give you more information. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Nicole Heinrich, the graduate from Bigfoot High School. You guys look like you need to stand up a second. Why don't you stand up a second? Everyone needs to shake off the sleeves. Oh gosh, there's attention spans. All right, Simon says sit down. I think when I was that age, I wouldn't have sat down. Thank you. I'm here to talk about continuing drug addictions and the alcohol issues that happen in Walworth County. One of the things that we don't talk about a lot, though, is that what leads to addiction. We talk about that people experiment, that their friends or family do it. We talk about that people want to do it to belong because their friends are doing it. They just want to try it out. A lot of you may do that and never become addicted at all. And you may wonder why the person next to you does become addicted. The thing is addiction is a really complex issue. People start for other reasons too that are not mostly talked about. Talk about mental health issues like anxiety and depression and trauma. A lot of things that happen is we recognize that there are sexual assaults. There is physical abuse that occurs. There are attention deficit. There are depression issues that keep people from seeking out mental health issues, and it's much easier as a teenager, I think, sometimes to turn to things like drugs and alcohol. Like Deputy Newman had said, also people start doing things like playing sports, and a good meaning doctor will prescribe you a medication that you end up taking a little bit too long, or that you need more because you start realizing it makes you feel better. Being a graduate of Bigfoot High School, I've been here living in Walworth County for the majority of my life, and I've seen drugs and alcohol hit all different ages levels. When I think back to my days, and I think that often we don't talk about people who complete suicide due to drugs and alcohol. My first experience with drugs and alcohol addictions and with mental health issues began with a student in class, and I think of George all the time. I think about how substances are hard to stop and how our genetics and surroundings around us make an impact. The substances work directly on our brains. So when you think about things that make you feel good, like when you're eating ice cream, when you're playing a sport, maybe your first kiss or many kisses after that, we talk about how those chemicals start setting off in your brain and start making you feel good. But this chemical also gets set off in your brain by drugs and alcohol. And the more and more we use that, the more and more we artificially start making our body think that we're making those good feeling chemicals. So we're overstimulating ourselves with the drugs and alcohol. So have you guys heard of dopamine? Yeah, kind of, maybe. That's that natural chemical in your body that makes you feel good. If you start doing it with drugs and alcohol, your natural body chemicals don't create anymore. So when you stop, you start feeling depression, anxiety, not feeling like yourself. And that's why many people start going back to using over and over. Concentration issues become problems too. And when you stop, sometimes your body doesn't naturally repair itself right away. That can take years if it repairs at all. Recovery is a lifelong process, and relapses do occur. We often hear that it's, people feel like, why don't they just get over it? It didn't happen to me. What's their problem? Why can't they just stop? People do want to stop. They really do. And a relapse is not because they're trying to let you down, or because they don't have a reason to quit, or that they're not a lost cause. People can get clean and sober. They just need a lot of help to do so. So we think about some of the things of why people don't seek help. We're afraid to tell our friends or family that somebody's struggling. We're afraid to say if we're the ones struggling. Oftentimes we're worried about ratting somebody out or getting them in trouble. I think about it all the time. I wish that I had ratted out George. I wish I had told on him. I wish he did get in trouble for it, because he would be here today. I've seen it with family conflict, that during and under the influences, things that happen like unplanned pregnancies, crime and death from overdoses or suicide. The thing is you can help. You can be a support person. You can listen. You can offer to go to a teacher, to another adult, to somebody to talk to. I know the new way of handling things is text messaging and so forth. There's a text hope line. We have information about that up on the desk. There's also bracelets, so you can do that too. You can be anonymous through that, so if you're looking for someone to talk to or looking for advice or guidance, you can do that. We have many counseling locations as well, so you can encourage people to seek counseling. I have a listing of those too. We have our crisis intervention line at Walworth County Health and Human Services. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, all that good stuff. You can call and speak to somebody live. You don't have to give your name, but they can help provide you guidance, give you support as you help somebody try to get help. There are things like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous that are support groups here in Walworth County. But one of the things that we really want to stress is when we start talking about addiction is I don't know which one of you will get addicted and which one of you won't. And I don't know if you want to risk that, but the best way to not get addicted is just to never start. So, and I'm looking at you, I'm hoping you're not the one that starts. So I'll pass it on to Lisa Broll.
So my role at Health and Human Services is I am the manager of our Children and Families Division. So if you remember the picture that Deputy Newman had up here on the board with the mom and dad that had overdosed with a small child in the back seat strapped in the car seat, that's where we come in. Our role in this department is we're the ones that have to go out and investigate those situations. Deputy Newman might have been out on that call. He probably would have been calling our office saying, hey, we have a kid here that needs to be taken because we have to do something with these parents. And now here we have to walk in not knowing what's going on, and we're taking that child and we're ripping that child from its family. And we're going to have to place that child somewhere. So the only family this child knows, now suddenly we're going to place them with strangers, possibly, because if we can't find another family member to take them, that's the only people in their life, we now have to place this kiddo with complete strangers and expect this kid to be fine. I think that's the thing that we deal with in our world in Child and Protective Services. We are the ones where we might go out and be visiting a home, and this is something that happened probably in the last 3 months. One of my workers walked into a home, knocked on the door, the kids answered the door and said, Mom didn't answer the phone because she's not waking up. My worker goes into the room to try to wake up the parent unresponsive, drug overdose. That was really hard on my worker to have to come back, and she's the one who had to deal with that. She's the one who had to come back, and she's the one who had to deal with the children and the crying and the hysteria that the kids have because now the only loved one that they have is no longer there. I think these are the things that we don't realize is that it's the impact that we can make, the impact that we have on other people in our lives when we decide to use alcohol and drugs, and how it affects all the other people around us. It's all the family members, it's your coworkers, it's your friends, all those other people that you impact when you're using. And like Nicole said, sometimes we just don't have control over it. But what our role is that we want to make sure that people are safe. I hope that none of you ever cross my path. Ironically, when I heard this was here, I was kind of sad. I'm not sure if I'm the right person because I really don't want anybody in this room ever to have to come through my division. I don't want to see any kids coming through our juvenile justice system where you're getting in trouble for using, and next thing you know, we're putting you in secure detention, or you continue to use, or you continue to get in trouble with the law, and next thing you know, we have a judge ordering you into corrections. We have 2 kids that are placed in corrections right now, one of them for drug use. I don't want to see that happen to anybody in this room or any of your friends. But one thing I want you to be mindful of is in the area that I work is that we do have Child Protective Services. And so we do get a lot of times where people, family, friends, school people will call us and say they're concerned. Or they'll call and they'll ask, hey, I'm concerned that my friend is using. I'm concerned that my friend is feeling suicidal. I want to tell you right off the bat, that's not what Child Protective Services is. That's where we would encourage you to be calling crisis intervention. What I would encourage you, though, is that if you do have friends or you have family members that you maybe are concerned that their parents are using drugs and there's small children in the house, and you're concerned that maybe the kids have access to things that they shouldn't have access to, reach out, tell somebody, let those people know, let your teachers know, let the adults know, so that we can be informed of those things, so that we can get in and help make sure that kids around the adults that are using are safe. I think that's really what our role in Child Protective Services is, just try to keep people safe, but we also want to keep families intact. We do a lot of things with various other organizations. We work with Nicole closely. We're working, Katie's going to talk next. We're having a family treatment court starting pretty soon here, and all the parents that are going to be part of this court are all parents that have had their kids removed from the home that are now going to be able to have a court program that they're going to be working with to get the help they need, so hopefully we can get those kids back into the homes. I think there's lots of good messages out here, and I think my message here really to you guys is that just be mindful of just the impact that this makes on everybody around you, that it's not a solo thing, it's not an individualized thing that's going on. The choices that you make today really impact so many more people than just yourself, and it's the people around you as well and the impact that you leave on them. And then I'm going to let Katie come up so Katie can talk a little bit about drug courts.
Good morning. My name is Katie Bale.
Hill, and I'm the treatment court coordinator in Walworth County here. I am also the chair of the newly formed Walworth County Drug and Alcohol Coalition. I want to talk quick about the coalition. I really appreciate Julie kind of explaining that to you, because I think that's an easy way for students to get involved. Even if you just get on the email list and read what we're talking about. I was up north attending a methamphetamine summit, and everywhere in northern Wisconsin there are billboards and signs and awareness everywhere out there talking about drugs and alcohol, and specifically methamphetamine. And I was like, we should be doing something like that here. Where is our big sign awareness that is talking about these issues that everyone thinks aren't here, that aren't here in our community, that aren't here in our businesses, that aren't here in this school? I mean, these are real things. So within my work as the coordinator for the treatment courts, OWI court was formed about 6 years ago to focus on drunk drivers. And we don't take anyone until they hit their third OWI, operating while intoxicated drunk drivers. And by that point, it's kind of like, you know, they've had 3 attempts and now something's still not working. So we're trying to do an intervention that can hopefully redirect them back out, giving them intensive treatment that they need. But then it was in 2013, heroin started to come up, and it was a big conversation in opiates that we were dealing with. And in 2014, we started the Walworth County Drug Court. I don't think any of us knew what we were getting into when we started that, because I don't think anyone, even within our field, maybe Corey knew, but I don't think anyone within our field really anticipated what kind of nasty drug this was. And in 2014 actually is when we started to put on some of our first heroin summits to bring awareness to the community. And time again, I was met by parents and members of the community who said, there's no heroin here, we don't have a problem, opiates aren't an issue. But I'm seeing students who graduated from those schools or who are attending UW-Whitewater entering drug court. And so it had to have started somewhere. So it was here, and it's unfortunately been persistent, and it's just something that is relentless, that we feel, Nicole said this to me I think 5 years ago, that the best treatment for substance abuse is prevention. And that's what we're here for, because as Nicole was talking about earlier, it's really hard to treat it on the back end, but if we can get you to stop before you even start, then it's significantly easier. The people in drug court are good people. They lost their way, and they were introduced to drugs at an early age. I can tell you the average age of a participant in drug court who first started using drugs or alcohol, mostly drugs though, was 13. 13 is when these people are starting to use drugs. By 15, they're starting to experiment more with maybe some cocaine, some ecstasy, some pills. Especially now, pills are easy to take. It's not scary because you know it's a pill. It's not something that's mixed that you can just take a pill. And by the time that they are 17, 18, they're IV heroin users. And I think nobody sitting here today thinks that if they ever got hooked on opiates that they would become an IV heroin user, because you just have, standards that are higher than that. Those are the people who are on the streets. Those are Skid Row people that are sitting there and just using the drug. And it's very quick that it just turns, because it gets you high faster and it gets you high easier. So when you're snorting it, it just quickly changes to something like that. And I have people who are 18, 19 years old who are shooting heroin. Drug court is not an easy program by any means, especially because the average age of our participant in the program is 26. A lot of these people don't have criminal histories leading up to the point where they're in mid-20s, but they do, like I said, start using when they're 18 years old. So that's your senior year of high school. You've progressed all through high school and you get to using heroin by the time you're 18, and then you start to steal because it's expensive.
You start to rack up some charges, maybe get some possessions, an underage drinking ticket, some paraphernalia, and all of a sudden then you pick up your felony. And now what? You're 21, maybe had plans of going to college, maybe we're in college. I have students who are in college who are in drug court, and now you're having to maybe go to prison. It's just these ramifications that you don't anticipate. Within drug court, we do frequent and random drug testing. So who here likes to pee in front of other people? Anybody? Because that's what's going to happen if you get into, yes, they're in the blue, he likes to. That's what's going to happen if you get into, there's a lot of people in blue over there, so. That's what's going to happen if you get into drug court, or as, you know, you enter jail or prison, as Ted's going to speak to, because you lose all of those rights when stuff like that happens. And it's an unfortunate predicament to be in, and Julie with Southeastern Monitoring and her staff try and make it as discreet as possible, but there's still nothing discreet about the fact that someone is watching you urinate. And we have to do that because people try, and they're in this addictive mindset, and so that's kind of something that I think everyone here has touched on, that not only are you using, but there's a lot of other things that come along with it. You're lying, you're stealing, you're cheating, you're avoiding friends and family, you're making new friends who are using with you. So this whole lifestyle change suddenly takes over, and you become this person that you didn't ever think that you would become. And so we have to do these drug testing where people watch you, because people don't always bring in their own urine. People don't always, you know, have their be prepared to provide their own sample. They bring other things in, full of their friend's urine. So how would you like if your best friend, your BFF, hit you up and was like, hey, can you pee in this for me so I can bring it in to beat my drug test today? Or do you want to put your best friend's urine somewhere in your body to try and beat a drug test? I mean, that's a low point of your life that is a complete reality for people who are involved in the system. So if anything, kind of keep that in mind as well. So one thing I do want to point out too is, and it's been a reoccurring theme as we've gone through here today, is talk to somebody, reach out. So many of these people kept this private from their friends and family. You just saw everything from Deputy Newman of what this stuff looks like. So whether you know people who are using and you've seen it before, or you just saw what it was today, be cognizant of that. Parents, if you're here as well, be cognizant of these things that you can find in your children's rooms. And in your rooms, let your parents go through your rooms, or don't throw fits if they go through your rooms to try and find this stuff. They're there to protect you, because the people that I have in my program, their parents stopped taking their calls 3 years ago. Their friends and family stopped coming around. They can't see their grandkids, they can't see their kids, they can't see their grandparents. They can't see anybody in their life anymore because everyone wants to cut off those ties with them. So these are serious implications for a quick decision, and I don't think there's any shame or worry that should come with you being a concerned friend, you being a concerned sibling, you being a concerned child. I mean, parents as well. Talk to somebody, reach out. There's so many ways that you can do it, because I would hate to see you in any of the situations that we've seen. I've had 5 people personally who I've had planning to come into drug court who have died this year. And that's hard, because these people finally get the opportunity to start and get some help, and they don't make it long enough to even start the program. That's hard. So be proactive and think about yourself and your future, because it's really hard to go through high school, through college, through a job, and be a drug addict on top of that. So next I'd like to introduce Ted Hawver, who's going to tell you his story.
Can you guys hear me? You good? All right. I really struggled with really kind of what to bring to this, because I am completely on the other side of all of these people that have presented. And I didn't know what to say to really kind of like change your mind maybe with what you might have. So I just thought maybe I'll just tell you my life and what I've gone through, and then you can just use that and make your decisions based upon that. So I'm going to steal Officer Newman's quote at the end. I never took the hard right. I always took the easy way. In kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher told my mom that I was the hyperest kid that she's ever had. Second grade, I was diagnosed ADD. From second grade until middle school, I was in I don't remember the exact number, but it was between 8 and 10 different inpatient hospitals for medication evaluations and medication changes. I was on that many different ADD medications. Maybe some of you can relate. You know, it was hard because I would spend 2 to 3 weeks in these hospitals as growing up, all the way through middle school. You know, you guys know, if someone's different, they just don't fit in. School was hard. I grew up in a split family between my dad and my mom divorced. My home life was not easy. There was a lot of turmoil in my home life. My mother's ED'd me, if you guys know what that is called the cops and had me put in a hospital. I think it's 2 or 3 times that's happened. Growing up in a split family is hard enough. Some of you might be able to relate to that. You know, I can definitely understand. I started on Ritalin. I was changed all those different medications. I ended up back on Ritalin in middle school. I didn't like taking Ritalin because it made me feel like I was a zombie. And this was in the 90s, so don't think that I'm old. You know, I can't relate, but I came across the opportunity to sell my Ritalin for weed. So I started smoking weed in middle school. I would sell my Ritalin to people, and in return, the money that I would make from selling my Ritalin, I would buy weed, and I would smoke weed. And I convinced, myself and everybody that I was, self-medicating, because, weed is, it's good. It was self-medicating. That's what I thought. It really kind of changed my life. It put a lot of stress on my home life, of already stressed and turmoil home life with my mom. The fact of selling my Ritalin and making money put that mentality in me to figure out that if I just got a lot of weed and I could sell it, I would have my own weed to smoke, and then I would be able to, sell it and make money. So I did that all through middle school and into high school. Started drinking in high school, going to parties, still dealing weed. And I've really struggled prior to this, prior to everything that I've been through. I argued that weed was not a gateway drug because it was weed. Everybody smokes weed. That's kind of the mentality that people have. Everybody smokes weed. It's good. It's not a big deal. But when I reflect now and look back, being in that crowd, because being in high school, I didn't fit in. Being with my peers as we progressed through grades, I didn't fit in. You know, I wasn't a jock. I wasn't, you know, a prep or anything like that. I fit in with the smokers, you know, the outside cast, because everybody, you know, that group accepted everybody. So being in that group and dealing the drugs and being around the drugs exposed me to other drugs, and started using cocaine in high school and parties. Used to take a lot of LSD. Used to trip a lot. Used to trip in school. You know, I've experimented with just about anything, what you can name: Molly, ecstasy, hash, opium. You know, you put it there, and it was there. The only drug that I didn't get myself involved with was heroin. I'll get a little further into this. So high school was really kind of like, it was like the mecca of drug use, because, you know, everybody kind of had that drug, you know, and everybody was doing drugs, you know, back then. I was selling weed to the preps behind the door, saying, "Don't tell anybody that, you know, that we did this." So high school was not an easy thing. As you guys probably know, high school is hard enough as being a kid and all the changes that you're going through. I was 16, and there was an incident that happened at my house. At that time, I was selling weed to my stepdad, and I was smoking weed with my stepdad. I increased my cost of weed to my stepdad, and he did not see that as an appropriate thing. So my stepdad beat me like I was a man. He beat me to where my eyes swelled shut, broke my nose. You know, he hit me once, he picked me up, hit me again, and then kicked me a few times when I was on the ground. My sister called the cops, and the cops came, and my mom had me arrested along with my stepdad. My mom bailed my stepdad out of jail and left me in jail. It was the first time, you know, I'd ever gone through something like that. You know, I was left there. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to explain the emotions, knowing that, you know, your mom did that, just completely left me there. So that really started my experience with the criminal justice system. I got out of jail, moved in with my dad. You know, just a lot of manipulation, you know, with that. So I came here. I came here in 2000, and I found the same crowd that I did when I went to Delavan and when I was in Delavan, and I did the same thing. Then I turned 18, and I thought that, you know, I had everything figured out when I was 18, and I dropped out of Bigfoot, 2 credits short of graduating. I said, I don't want to go to school anymore. I was selling weed, I was going to make a bunch of money, I was going to buy a house, you know, and I had all these fictitious, you know, dreams that I was going to, you know, be, you know, I was going to be Pablo Escobar, you know, is what I thought. So I turned 18, I was in Elkhorn, and there was a party, and got called up, and somebody wanted to buy a bunch of weed, and I had a pound of weed, and I had it with me in a backpack. And we were at Speedway in Elkhorn, and somebody else was driving. AJ was driving, and there were some girls parked at the a gas pump, And we pull out of Speedway, and he, you know, squeals the tires a little bit, and there's the cop there, and woo, we get pulled over. And this is the mentality that I had, like everyone talks about, like being a drug user. I thought I could stuff a pound of weed in a gallon Ziploc bag. I mean, I don't know, you guys, I hope none of you know what that looks like, and to shove it down my pants and try to beat the cops. You know, well, the cops aren't dumb, you know. So I got pulled out, and I got arrested, and I got charged with possession, and that was my first criminal conviction. That was the second time that I went to jail. I got put on probation, and I didn't stop doing what I was doing. I was still living in that lifestyle. So I ended up getting revoked from probation and went to jail, spent some time in jail. And I got out, still doing the same thing, you know, being with the same type of people, the same friends that I had, you know, throughout high school. And then one day, this girl comes up and says that she's pregnant and this kid is mine. I was 18 years old, and like, what do you do? I didn't know what to do. So my mom, you know, said I had to get married and raise this kid. I ended up moving to Minnesota. I ended up moving to Caledonia, Minnesota. And I lived there for a couple of years, and on my birthday, I get a card, and I open up the card, and there's a paternity result in the card. And for the last year and a half, I raised this kid like I thought it was my own. Well, the paternity result comes back and it's not my kid. What do you do? You know, I went and got drunk. You know, I thought that was the appropriate thing to do, was to go drink, to just forget about, you know, everything like that. Well, I ended up separating from that situation, and I had moved to Spring Grove and Minnesota, and I worked a job, and I went to the bar all the time. And I met this guy named Todd Weston. We talked for a while, and we had this great idea. We were gonna make some meth. We had it all figured out. For the next year, we made meth. I sold meth. We made a lot of it. Seen a lot of people, seen a lot of pictures of what you showed up there. I've seen them firsthand. I've just seen the addiction. I've seen what it does to people. Begging, just completely begging, you know, almost begging for their life for drugs because they don't have any money, doing things that people should not be doing just to get high. September 2003 was in Todd Weston's trailer. It was up on a hill, cornfield on one side, woods all around the rest. And he's got 2 Rottweilers, and the dogs are just going crazy. Well, to take one step back, being around all that stuff and being around, you know, people are coming, selling, and using, and being in places where people are using, I ended up starting to use. they say don't get high on your own supply. Well, I mean, I could just make my supply whenever I wanted. And I started using. And I used a lot for a while. And I mean, I would stay up for 3 days, 4 days at a time, just completely out of it. So September 2003, the dogs are going crazy. What does Todd say? He's going to shoot the dogs. We're high and he's going to shoot the dogs. I mean, it's not reality that when you're like that. The cops, there was cops all around. They were suited up, assault rifles. There was like 20 cops that had surrounded the trailer. I get arrested, so does everyone else, and I was charged in Houston County, Minnesota with conspiracy to manufacture methamphetamine, possession of paraphernalia, methamphetamine paraphernalia, and tampering with anhydrous ammonia. I got that paperwork and I was facing 50 years. I can't tell you what it feels like when you get that paper and you're facing 50 years in prison and there's nothing you can do about it. I was in jail for quite a while in Minnesota, and eventually the judge lowered my bond, and I was able to bond out. And I came back here to Wisconsin, to Walworth County. I ended up picking up 3 OWIs, well, 2 OWIs in this amount of time, and there was an altercation with another person, and I ended up getting charged with operating without owner's consent, which is essentially stealing a car, and a bail jumping, and some disorderly conduct, and some batteries, and everything like that. I went to jail for 8 months. I got out. I was in jail for 8 months. 8 months. I got out, I got drunk, and I got an OWI. I got my third. I was out 18 hours. 18 hours. And I picked up my third OWI. So from 2005, when I don't even count those 8 hours, because I got out, put on some clothes, got drunk, went to jail. So from 2005 to 2011, I was incarcerated. At sentencing, when I got that third OWI, Honorable Judge Race, who's retired, he said to me in the courtroom, before he sentenced me, he said, "Mr. Hawver, you're a one-man crime wave, and society needs to be protected from you." And then he sentenced me to 12 years. 6 in, 6 out. So I went to prison. I can't tell you what it feels like to get shackled and handcuffed, get put on a bus with everyone else that's going to prison, people you have no idea. You could be sitting next to a serial pedophile, a rapist, a murderer. You have no idea. Can't see out, there's no windows. And we're driving down the road, and you can kind of see out the windshield of the bus. It was nighttime, and then it was just like daylight. It was just daylight. And that's when we pulled up to Dodge. Dodge Essential Receiving for all people that go to prison. We're all free. You know, we have We have the ability to do what we want. We don't really have anything hanging over our heads. We have our parents, but essentially we're free, you know. That first gate opened up at Dodge, and the bus pulled in, and it was like freedom was escaping that gate. That gate closed, and it said that I was somebody's property. I wasn't free anymore. I was the property of the state of Wisconsin. I hope nobody in this room ever has to feel that way. I went to prison, went to Dodge. I won't get into the details of all of my incarceration, but I ended up spending almost 4 years in solitary confinement. I spent over 3 years in Supermax. I spent 90% of my time in Max and Supermax. Everybody hears the stories, you know, about prison. Some of them are true. I've seen things and been involved in things that nobody should ever have to do. Prison changes you. It changes part of who you are. It takes part of your soul. You can't get that back. I missed out on my brother graduating high school. I missed out on my sister getting married. I missed out on my niece being born. I can't get those back. Those cherishable moments are gone forever because of the choices that I made. I sat in solitary confinement. Just think. Think about this. I sat in solitary confinement for almost 4 years. 4 years. In a room that had no windows. You couldn't see out the door. You couldn't see another person. The light stayed on 24 hours a day. There was no clock. With a video camera in the corner. I honestly couldn't tell you what day it was. I could give you a roundabout time of what time of day it was, due by the rounds and the meals that were given. But if you asked me, I wouldn't be able to give you the appropriate time. Maybe some of you guys have a pantry. Maybe some of you guys have a closet. The shower was in your room. You never left that room, ever. You didn't. You can't see. Close yourself up in a room and stay there for 4 years. Live in a room, live in your closet or your bathroom for 4 years. Think about what that does to you. It takes away. January 12th, 2011. I was released from prison. I was released right from Supermax. I'd spent all that time in Supermax. They opened the door and kicked me out. Hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life was try to make that transition. I couldn't sleep for about a week. I still have those demons that I deal with today, all because of the decisions that I made growing up. the pain, the despair, the depression, the hurt. The only way that I thought I could deal with that was to drink. So I chose to drink again. I drank while I was on parole. I went to the bar. I got drunk. Decided to drive home. I hit a sign on the way home. And about 150 yards from my driveway, I pulled over and decided that I needed to go to sleep. An off-duty police officer drove by. I'm assuming he probably called in, and next thing I know, it's an officer banging on my window of my car. I got my 4th OWI. I went to jail. I vowed when I came out of prison that I was never going to put myself in that situation again. Just vowed. I was never going to go to jail again. Never have to deal with those emotions. And it's terrible. So I decided that I was never going to go back. But the power of drugs and alcohol sucked me right back in. I sat in jail. I met with my parole officer. They were going to revoke my parole, and send me back to prison. I think it was going to be just over 3 years. They were going to send me back to prison. Everything that I talked to you about, those feelings and those emotions, and not wanting to be there, now I'm going back. All of a sudden, this angel came, Julia May, most wonderful person in the world. Got a phone call, called the public defender's office, talked to Julia May. Julia May thinks that she can get me into OWI court. Give me an ATR, which is an alternative to revocation. So, by the grace of God, I got into OWI court. And I've been through, I don't even know the number of treatments prior to this. Just when I came out of prison, my parole officer said, "You need drug and alcohol treatment." And that's what she said. So I went and did drug and alcohol treatment, but obviously that didn't work because I went back to drinking and I got my OWI. So I came to OWI court. Excuse me. And I took it serious because I didn't want to be put back in the position of being reincarcerated. So I ran with it. It was hard, a lot of rules and expectations. But it gave me a sense of responsibility that I really never had in my life, because I always took the easy road. I always made the decisions that were easy and selfish. It's easy to just, smoke some reefer because you don't think about the consequences after the fact. So I went through OWI court, completed OWI court successfully. July 2014, July 2014. I had to make a choice in my life to stop the reoccurring addictive behaviors that I had. So I had to make a choice. So I had to stop drinking. I'm almost 5 years. My life has changed dramatically. I became a peer mentor for OWI court and drug court. I have testified in front of the Walco County Board for the legitimacy of treatment courts. I'm a senior at UW Whitewater, but I'm 16 years behind my peers. 16. I should have been in college. I should have graduated high school. I should have went to college when I was 18, 19 years old. I should have had a job. Who knows? A family, a house. But I'm 34 and I'm 16 years behind my peers because of the choices that I made when I was your age. I do research. I do research about prison. I'm going to be academically published. I'm leaving tomorrow, actually, on a flight to Philadelphia to present research at the American Criminology Conference, which is odd, because I have 13 criminal convictions, I have 5 felonies, and I've been to prison. I'm an ex-con with 13 criminal convictions and 5 felonies. Think about that. I've been arrested by the police over 18 times throughout my life. I was in the system from the age of 16 until 34. I just finished my parole. Just finished my parole. From age 16 to 34, I was either on bond, in jail, or on supervision. How old are you guys? You 16? 15, 16? Yeah. So from your age until you're 34 years old, you've been in the criminal justice system. All because of the choices that I made when I was your age. I'm still, to this day, picking up the pieces of my life. I'm middle-aged. I'm middle-aged and I'm still trying to get my life in order. I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous. I just want to share with you my life experiences and my life and what I've been going through and what I have gone through, so you guys can sit here and say, wow, that guy is, wow. I honestly, I don't care what you call me. You can call me bad names, whatever you want. You can say, I don't want to be like that POS. It doesn't, that's fine. Because I want to use my life for an example for you guys not to follow down the path that I did. Because I was selling weed when I was your age to all the high school kids in here. And I was doing all the drugs I could get my hands on. And look where it got me. I made meth. I used meth. Everybody has kind of a notion of what jail food is, It's not like, sitting at home and eating some Hot Pockets or some pizza rolls, which are, by the way, pretty good. Jail food, it's bologna sandwiches and crap like that. When I got arrested from using meth, and I gained 70 pounds, 70 pounds in jail, on jail food. I weighed 140 pounds when I was arrested. I weigh 228 pounds today. You can Google my name. Google it. You'll find the article. It's in there. You can see my face. There's a picture on the newspaper. You read all about it. My life has been a complete disaster. But this disaster was made by my choices alone. And I don't want to see any one of you any one of you go through the things that I have. And I know that maybe some of you have facing some of the things that I did in my life. But all I can ask of you is to take a minute and think. Think for 30 seconds before you make that choice. Think about Officer Newman and all that stuff. He's got handcuffs. They suck. Being handcuffed sucks. And those choices can get you into handcuffs. I never want to put another handcuffs on if I, never again. I just want you guys to do great things. Because you guys, all of you, are the future to all of us. I didn't do great things in my life. I could have, maybe. But I made the wrong choices. And like all these people have said, reaching out to somebody. I always thought, oh, I'm not going to snitch on this guy. It's this code of conduct, this honor that we have. But my friend Greg is dead. Greg died when I was in prison. He's a really good friend of mine. He OD'd on heroin. Smartest guy I knew, smartest guy in class. I watched him go from smoking weed to seeing him at a party with a backpack full of Glade cans and a washcloth. I wasn't there when he took that step to use heroin. But I can only visit his grave. It's choices. It's all it is. It's easy. It's not hard. Some choices, making the right choices may take a second look, but don't do what I did. Don't do it. It's terrible. You guys have a future and a good life. Just keep it that way. I won't preach anymore. So, I'm done, guys. Just do good things.
Thank you. TJ.
Yes.
We have reserved the last part of the session this morning for questions and answers. I know there were questions that people had during the presentations we stopped. So I guess what I would ask is just to have the presenters, why don't you come on up here, and we'll open up the floor to questions. Mr. Enns.
Yeah.
Here's the question that I posed, and it's probably the best perspective on it. For young kids at this age or get a little older, they say, I'm going to be smarter because I'm still going to do it, but I'm not going to screw up. How do you answer that? How do you get them to realize?
I had that same mentality. I've seen people in high school that, got pulled into the principal's office or, got involved with law enforcement, with drugs. But I'm going to do this a different way. I'm going to do this, I'm, only going to sell weed on this side of the school. But you can never keep up with it. You can never be ahead of the game because you always get comfortable. And in being comfortable, you let your guard down, and it will always turn out in a negative fashion. I can say being in that lifestyle and in that community for so long, I've seen everybody will get involved in some way or fashion in the criminal justice system because it's just inevitable. You might think you're smarter, you might get away with it for 2 months, 4 months, but Officer Newman will find you because it always happens because we let our guard down. It's just natural.
Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, awesome question. I mean, guys like me, I mean, I'm just one person, but I and my partners are making careers out of trying to think outside the box, stay one step ahead of people who are making those choices. And we're doing the best we can, they're doing the best they can, but one thing I always told people who I caught and who I got to work with me as informants is there are no friends in this game. There are 0 friends. I've had people who I've worked with who have bought into, meaning buy drugs from, family members, their own family members, with my money. You know, there are no friends in the game, and when self-preservation takes over, when someone's trying to get out of trouble, friendship and camaraderie and love, it goes right out the window. So it's a great question, and just keep in mind that it is a back and forth cat and mouse game, but there is no safe or smart way to make those decisions.
Well, and another point too, it's hard to be on your A game if you're on meth or heroin, and Deputy Newman's not. You know, he's always going to be that much farther ahead of you too. So if you think you're smarter, eventually the addiction is going to take over, and you're going to spiral or you're going to slip up. And we see that time and time again in drug court. They can maybe get away with it once or twice, but once that addiction takes hold again, we're catching.
What other questions do you guys have? Somebody over here had a question. I was talking. Yeah.
That was me. It was on the PG extract slide. It was about the house on fire, but I raised my hand before you explained it.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep, that stuff, the fumes in the air from the butane of making THC extract becomes flammable. So a little bit of friction, static shock, lighting a cigarette, whatever, will ignite the air. And those fires happen a lot all over the country. We had one in Whitewater about a year and a half ago. Good question. Any other questions? Go ahead. Speak up just a little bit, please.
Is that people who get easily addicted on like PE drugs and needs to like help with that? Like when you're using it the way you're supposed to be using it, is it still like really easy to get addicted to?
I think it does depend on the person. Nicole, you want to?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. When you are diagnosed and struggle with like attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder, when you're taking a prescribed medication, it will bring you back to a normal level or like an average level, so you won't get that high off of it. People who don't struggle with that addiction and start taking it gives them the high and gives them that hyperactivity and things that come with it. So if you're taking it as prescribed and you've been diagnosed with it, you're good. It's when you're giving it to other people or other people are taking your stuff that's a problem.
Right, and also taking it improperly. You know, you hear about, you know, when you eat a pill the way you're supposed to, and you take it with a glass of water or whatever, your stomach breaks down certain parts of that pill, and so you get the proper dose as you should. When people start to take medication that's prescribed to them in an improper way, i.e. crushing it up and snorting it, you're getting way more of that medication in your system than you should, because the medication goes through the capillaries in your nose and directly into your brain. You're bypassing your stomach. That's where overdoses happen, and that's when you get down that path of using medication the wrong way. Eventually snorting it's not good enough, so you take a needle and you bang that stuff in your arm. That's that path of using it wrong, where addiction steps in and overdoses happen? Good question.
I would add too that if you think about if you're on a medication that you've been given and then somebody offers you something else to take, every time you're on a prescription, you're given a list of things that you shouldn't take. And I mean, I know from my work here, you know, sometimes you'll have students that have experimented with other drugs that were not prescribed to them, and they're on another prescription that is what they call counterindicated, and now we have a problem, and then we have to, you know, we have to try and address it. So I think using things as they're prescribed is certainly really important. I think the other thing, you know, you talked about was, or asked about the addiction. You know, one of the things that we see, I think everybody here has talked about it, is the dangers of prescription medication, especially painkillers. That runs rampant, and it's easy to become addicted or to use too much. I can speak from personal experience in the family with an elderly a parent who went through opiate addiction, basically an opiate use, and could really never get away from it. So it is something that is very prevalent in our society, and we know from research that heroin ends up becoming a part of that culture down the line because it's cheap.
Well, another thing too is like a lot of people have the mentality that you can just take one pill, you know, and you're okay. Be at a party, you know, everybody's body is different. I was at a party and I knew a girl that worked at the grocery store in Minnesota. She took one Vicodin 500, drank half her beer, and died at the party. It's really playing, you know, against the odds because you just don't know. You know, I've taken my fair share of pills and drank on them, which I shouldn't be standing here today 3 times over, and I'm still here. But I've seen people like that girl who took one Vicodin 500 that, and my thought was like, well, that's nothing. I need to take like 5 of those, you know. And she took one and drank half a beer and died. So it's really something that you guys have to think about. You don't know. You don't know. How do you know? You don't. And if you know, you're not, you know, shown that, you know, this is dangerous, one of your peers can take 2, you take 1 and you die. I mean, it's easy at a party. Like, you know, everyone here can attest to the fact that, you know, prescription pills are passed around like they're, you know, Tic Tacs. But it's so dangerous because you just don't know your body, and you could keel over dead, die, dead, no more, dead. I mean, dead, cemetery. By making that stupid choice because you don't know.
Other questions? Yeah.
So, if you like start a drug and like you want to quit, and you say you want to quit, and you try to quit, and like you can't quit, what do you do?
What we encourage you to do is seeking out counseling. There are through talk therapy, but there's also medication assistance programs, medication assisted treatment. So sometimes those medications, or if you're taking drugs and you can't stop, they can give something that will help block the effects of it or help stop cravings and so forth, while you can start working through behavior changes, through thought process changes, to help you obtain and maintain long-term sobriety. So sometimes like medication assisted treatment to treat addiction can be short-term to help people get over the hump, or for others maybe more longer term, where they may be on it for a few years before they're able to maintain their sobriety.
I think too, though, like in the like the instant, like I think you should take a bracelet, and if that's the case, and like you're in the moment, and I think you can either text the Hope line or call the crisis line, and reach out, because that's a wonderful, wonderful tool that a lot of people don't know about, and it's very anonymous. You can call, you don't have to tell your name. It's just somebody is there that you can just lean on and get some solid information and get some guidance. And I think that's very, very valuable.
And I think it's important, it's an awesome question, because it's important to understand that sometimes wanting and desire in your heart to quit something isn't enough. The molecules in some of these drugs attach onto molecules and cells in your brain. That's why when you're on an opiate, sometimes you develop a tolerance to it, so you have to continually take more and more and more to get to that same level of high you got in the beginning. So your body is physically addicted to it. So although you may want, and I've talked to hundreds of people this way, they want to quit, but they just can't. Because when they are not using, they are sick as sick can be. And sometimes they'll just have to use just a little bit just to stay even, just to stay functioning. So sometimes, like Nicole said, it does take that medication, properly prescribed and properly used, to defeat that physical part of the addiction. So yeah, like Ted said, if it's you, and we're talking about you, or you're talking about a family member that you know or a friend, make sure you get them these resources.
Go ahead.
Why do you think these addictions start? Is it through like stress or something, or is it boredom, or why do you guys think this kind of stuff?
I think it's different for everybody, really. It could be a surgery and a slippery slope of weaning off that drug, or it could be stress. It could be family tragedy or trauma. When you're growing up, something you saw that really affected you or whatever. I think everybody's path to it is different. There's some people that the path is similar, but I think it's really individualized.
You had a question?
When you're talking about September in 2003, and the dogs were going crazy, do you think that's because they got, not only using the drugs, but like, because they were around it so much, they kind of picked it up and kind of got addicted to it?
I think they have some.
Yeah, it was more like 20 plus cops that were hiding in the woods in the cornfield. That the cops, the dogs were going kind of crazy with that, but it's a very real possibility. I mean, the dogs were in the house and in the environment, so I mean, I can't attest to the fact that they were, affected by it, but I mean, hypothetically, they it's a possibility, and I at that time for me, I was in such a different place that I didn't recognize any difference or anything like that. But it is something that could have happened.
That's one of the dangers with methamphetamine manufacturing, is that the gases that are off-gassed from the manufacturer go out into the environment and into the home. So they've had cases where they've removed children from homes where methamphetamine was produced, and even though the child wasn't directly associated with the use or in the room where the parent was cooking, the child tests positive for methamphetamine.
And we work closely with the Child Advocacy Center, and there's a pediatrician that can do testing on young children. So sometimes we have cases where there will be people who have powder residue, like on the floor or on tables, and small children, toddlers are walking around and they're touching it with their fingers. They get it on themselves, and of course kids put their hands in their mouths. So we've removed kids and we've taken them there, and they can do drug testing to see if these small children have ingested something. Even though it might have just been something little on their fingers, they put it in their mouth and they've now ingested that drug into their system, and you're looking at a 2-year-old.
There's a lot of ways to make meth. I mean, there's more ways than you can even imagine. But the chemicals that are really let loose in the house, from anhydrous ammonia to lithium to reaction between muriatic acid and tinfoil, and the smoke and the fumes are all through the house, and if there's children in there breathing it, and I mean it's toxic. They had to destroy the trailer because it was that hazardous. So it's a real danger.
Have any of you seen pictures about on TV where they bust a meth lab and they show the people that are going to clean up the lab? They don't walk in there dressed like you or I do. I mean, it's what we call a hazmat situation, and they require special decontamination. And so it's nasty stuff, and anybody that's exposed to it runs the risk of significant exposure. Other questions? Yes?
What made me turn around? Well, I smoked weed in prison. I used to smoke weed in prison, so I think it's a solitary confinement that really gave me an opportunity to do a lot of self-reflection and not put myself in a position to get back into that environment was really my focal point. But I came out and I didn't use drugs because I was done with drugs because I didn't really want to mess with drugs. It's hard to find. It costs money. It's just a pain in the ass. Oh, sorry. That it's just it's illegal. So for alcohol, for me, it's readily available. It does a great job of taking away everything like that. So I don't know a lot about addictive behavior. I told I was addictive behavior. I never really believed it, but that was really how I learned growing up to deal with all of my trauma and childhood and stuff like that, was to use drugs and use other things to get away from all that. So when I came home from prison and I had all that trauma from prison, my go-to was to drink. So yeah, it's there. I mean, I'm almost 5 years sober now, and there's days where I'm just like, dude, man, like I don't know if I can do this, but it takes diligence and hard work. Like it doesn't. I think it's always going to be with me, that addictive part of my body and my personality, but it just takes a lot of like diligence and hard work to overcome and fight those desires.
Other questions? Yeah.
Did you develop any long-term effects from doing drugs?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have.
Can I jump on that stat? Because I forgot to say that in my story. So methamphetamine, even occasional use, has serious long-term effects where 3 to 5% of your brain just goes away. Like it just doesn't come back. All drugs, it takes a lot of time for you to return to normal brain activity, but meth, literally 3 to 5% of your brain is gone from doing that.
Yeah, so I've never gotten any neurological testing done. I honestly would probably like to see the difference. But what I've noticed is I'm not as sharp as I was. I sometimes feel really dull, like having a conversation. I have a really hard time like taking words out of my brain and putting it into my mouth and putting it out. I've really noticed a significant loss in my short-term memory. It's really spotty. I can remember some things and other things I can't remember. I do truly believe 100% that I have significant, damage from doing drugs. I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't like had cancer or anything from, being in the house or anything like that, but I mean, it's just a concern.
Have you grown in anxiety at all from your experience?
Yeah. I deal with that on a daily basis. Prison really had a hard or a direct effect on that. I came out with a lot of anxiety from that. There's a lot of different issues that happened within and my time that really, I think, set that forth. I think I might have had a little bit as growing up, but it's really kind of come to the forefront from going through those experiences. And probably drugs. I'm sure drugs didn't take a back seat on that either.
How many people do you think die of overdose and
Oldies in Wisconsin.
I don't even know. It's like
I don't, yeah, nationally, I know that it's one every approximately 16 minutes that dies. Probably, I don't want to speculate, but nationally, that's what it is.
There's in Ohio, there's a huge fentanyl outbreak that's going on, and they have like anywhere between 3 and 10 people a day that are brought in the morgue, in the county morgue. Like it's just that quick that people are dying from it.
Yes.
How has using drugs and alcohol impacted your relationship with your family?
Oh, significantly. I have a strained relationship with my father and my stepmother, or my stepmom. I have, and I'm trying to build back the relationship with my sister. Throughout my criminal history and being in jail and supervision and all that stuff, it's taken a huge toll on my family, and they have voiced their opinions and their feelings on some of the matters, but it's still a rebuilding process because it's really affected them. I'm not really sure how to
But
really
it
sum
didn't
that
just
up.
affect you, it impacted everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody
and I was, in that whole process, I was so selfish of, in doing what I was doing, I just didn't see past myself, and it was affecting everybody else, and honestly, I just didn't care, because I was doing whatever Ted was doing, and I wanted to do it, and I was going to do it, and I just didn't care what anybody else thought. So I mean, that, if you can think about that, how that would impact your family.
Okay, last question.
How long do you think it took you to stop?
How long did it take me to stop doing what I was doing? Probably, July 26, 2013? July 26, 2013 was when I got arrested for my OWI. That was the day that I stopped doing what I was doing, and it really changed, and OWI court really helped me change my thinking pattern and my behavior, so. A long time.
So as we finish up, I want to thank you all for your attention. I hope that you've pulled some things out of this that will help, and I know you'll certainly be talking about it in your health education classes over the next couple of days and a week or so. We have resources available for you on the table if you want to grab some resources. The lunch bell just rang, and so thank you.